Huns were a nomadic people from the steppes of Asia. In the second half of the 4th century they arrived in Europe, where in 376 AD they conquered and assimilated the majority of the Grothinks Goths, while the majority of the Thervingi Goths were forced to take refuge in the Roman Empire. During the 5th century, Huns pushed further west, eventually settling in Pannonia. During this period they fought against many barbarians, both Germanic and non-Germanic, whom the Huns subjugated to their authority, as well against the Romans, mainly in the Eastern Empire. The Hun Empire reached its peak from 445 to 450 AD, when they were united under the reign of Attila. In 445, after a victorious campaign against the Eastern Empire, Emperor Theodosius II was forced to pay triple the price normally paid to the Huns in order to keep them out of the empire. In 451 AD, Attila led a large raid west, pushing to Orleans, before being caught by the Roman barbarian coalition at a place called the Catalonian Plains, where he was defeated. He died shortly after, in 453. The Huns and the Hun battleboard can also be used as Allan tribes, however then your choice of levy equipment is limited to just bows. This battleboard is available from Saga, Age of Invasions. This was originally called the Aetius and Arthur supplement. The updated battleboards are also available separately on the Gripping Beast website, and the FAQ for Aetius and Arthur updates the battleboards to be playable in version 2. The dice that you will use are the green dice similar to those of the Age of Invasions Saxons, Goths, and from the Age of Vikings, Anglo-Saxons and Anglo-Danes. The only special rule for the Huns are that some abilities can only affect Hun units, which include the Warlord, Hearthguard, and Warriors. Levy do not count as Huns. Huns can be pretty difficult to play, and sometimes difficult to build a list for. The board doesn't favor one unit type in particular, rather it is a well-rounded force that works the best. While it can work with a full roster of composite bow warriors, it helps to have a little bit of everything. The bread and butter ability on the board is the Endless Horde. An important note is that it forces all of your mounted units to move, whether you want them or not, so factor that in for fatigue. Endless Horde is a great way of getting everyone into position, getting everyone to shoot, or just in general mixing up the board. It is fantastic to be able to move all of your army with only 2 dice. However, note that with the change in composite bow rules, their shooting is not restricted. Much of being successful with the Huns is about biding your time. They don't have any directly aggressive combos, unless you get lucky with weak point. So it's mostly about whittling away at your opponent's force, adding fatigue, and staying safe between turns 1 and 3. In the last 2 turns of the game, the goal should be for the Hearthguard to move in to close combat and destroy the weakened units. Getting set up for Encircle Them is some way easier than it used to be, since you don't have to leave any distance between your unit and your enemy. It can also be a death trap if you have no way out. With as many multiple activations as will happen, I might recommend a banner on your more important unit. Storm of Arrows, Endless Horde, Encircle Them, and Death from Above, Weak Point, and Last Breath are the main abilities that you'll probably be using on the board. Panic rarely gets used since it uses 2 rares, and the effects are somewhat mediocre for that cost. The equipment available to the Huns are: the Warlord must be mounted, Hearthguard must also be mounted, Warriors are mounted and take composite bows. The levy, you have 3 options: mounted, or bows, or spears. This is not available if you're playing as the Allans. An example warband would be 2 points of Hearthguard, 3 points of mounted composite bow warriors, and 1 point of levy or vagrant warriors. You can drop the levy or vagrant warrior for more composite bow warriors, same thing with 1 point of Hearthguard. However, having a mixed force is definitely useful. Many abilities only affect your mounted warriors, so taking at least 2 points is necessary. Mounted Hearthguard are useful for combat punch, but do not have many abilities specific to them. You will probably want to include 1 point of levy on foot, either with bows or with no special ability, since there is a special ability on the battleboard for them, which gives them a little bit of combat punch in melee. Obviously, guarding or transporting objective markers with your mounted warriors or Hearthguard severely limits their effectiveness by reducing their mobility and giving them fatigue. So if you're playing a lot of scenarios, having some foot slogging units is definitely useful. You have two legendary units available to you, Attila and Alden. Attila is not really worth it for 1 point. However, Alden is easily one of the better characters in the game. So if you're able to take special characters, I would definitely look at his rules. This review is already getting quite long, so I'm going to go through the model ranges quite quickly. Gripping Beast has a metal range of Huns. They also have some steppe archers in metal. You can probably use their plastic light Arab cavalry box set as steppe archers if you avoid some of the more recognizable Arab features. Footsore has a complete range. Wargames Factory has a good range of Huns as well. Fireforge also has some Mongol range. Although these two peoples are several centuries apart, you can avoid some of the more Mongol looking bits in their boxes and make some reasonable Huns. The Huns battleboard can be used in all of the current historical universe books. In Age of Vikings to represent the Steppe Peoples, and in Age of Crusades as the Cumans. The Steppe Peoples cover a large number of civilizations, such as the Tartars, Pechenegs, Sabirs, Avars, Khazars, and the Bulgars. Given the importance of these enemies during the period covered in Age of Vikings, for both the Pagan Rus, the Last Romans, and even the Carolingians, I believe that including this faction as an old friends, new enemies section does a little bit of a disservice to this faction. The Cumans in Age of Crusades also give you a great excuse to use some of their famous heavy cavalry with the iconic faceplates, as shown in this video. All of these are made by Scott. At a stretch, you could use some Mongol miniatures, since the equipment available in-game for these two factions are almost identical. Be aware that these two peoples' incursions into Europe are separated by 9 centuries. However, many people still use Mongol miniatures as Huns and vice versa, although this is historically inaccurate. I would like to thank Steven for helping me out with this video, providing me some tactics and a lot of input on their playstyle, and also to Scott for sending me pictures of his Cumans which have been used in this video.